The Shortest Day by Sue Johnson. Wait at the daylight gate. The gap between the worlds is thin as a lace curtain. Do not be afraid. None will harm you. Look for signs of magic near oak, ash, and thorn. Be aware of crows and ravens. They are the other world's gatekeepers, sent with messages from loved ones. Leave an offering of silver. Be thankful for all you have. Look for the coming of the light.
Gloaming by Mandy Macdonald. The air darkening after rain. No, don't move, not yet. The moment held fast so as not to undertake anything fatal.
Factory by Joy Howard. Like sleeping elephants abandoning the day's march, machines gasp small breaths into the cooling dark. Now for the night stoop of owls, for the pale-eyed moon, for teeth bared at the infancy of human endeavour. MacFarquhar's Bed by Reece, Abbott. The spring nor'wester blows steady and chill in MacFarquhar's face, but the early evening air is honeyed with golden gorse. He strolls past the kirk and the sweet chestnuts that edge the town, hiking up the winding road. Every so often he turns, catching his breath, and taking in the cairngorms still wearing their snowy caps. Cutting through the back of the Raggle-Taggle farm, he passes the little row of workers' cottages and the old stone barn where the cows low and moan. He crosses the lush sloping fields, greeted by the tight fleeced sheep, and on the summit he pauses in the soft gloaming and pulls out his brass eyeglass. The mill pond Cromarty lies to his right, and the Murray Firth to his left, but tonight the Murray is the sea inlet that holds his eye. On he ambles, down the avenue where the bark of the beech trees trails silvery lichen beards. Their dark, wind-sculpted branches reach out for the sky, wild as the hair of Macbeth's crones. When the town is an hour behind him, he creeps along the winding cliff, brushing by spiny gorse and boulders turned cushions by thick emerald moss. On he traces a path that's narrow as a goat track and slippery as soap from the day's mizzling showers. Below him waves drum in the new tide's arrival, smashing on the crumbling Cornelian cliffs, drowning out the skylarks that serenade day's end. A red kite dances above him, watching his progress, hoping for a fall and fresh prey. Finally, MacFarquhar reaches the stony beach, edging past the shell middens left by the old hunter-gatherers. He climbs the ancient knobbled sea arch that has formed in the rust-red sandstone until he is above the glinting firth that's blue as the slate roof of his creel. A pair of unblinking shags observe him, then carry on fishing. They are used to him by now. The turning tide exposes the fossil-rich outcrops, rocky fingers where fortune-seeking optimists come chancing their luck, hammering and chiselling through millennia. Beneath him, the ocean has carved a well, an old chapel still adorned with scraps of cloth from townspeople seeking cures for their ailments and wanting to cast out evil spirits. The fulmars mock, their cackling amplified by the cliffs. MacFarquhar agrees, he is long past such foolish superstition. Now he lies on the grassy outcrop bed, waiting for the dimming of the day. Some hate it drawing in. He loves it for obliterating. From his lookout atop the arch, he scans the firth for a sign that his contraband is sailing his way. But all he spots is a pod of bottlenose dolphins. A gliding peregrine hunts for pigeons in the caves. As the wind picks up, he draws his length of plaid closer around his shoulders and closes his eyes for a moment. Not all bad. He's self-made, a pirate, a smuggler, a man who has placed his faith in faster, easier, more certain ways to improve his fortune than wishes or fossils or prayers. Night will fall. He embraces that certainty.
End of Ramadan, Mombasa, Kenya, by Michelle Penn. I could tile rooms with stasis. A wail could replace my voice, denoting the divisions between the bold and the veiled. The winding streets of the Arab quarter at dusk. Mosquitoes fight to claim my flesh. I sidestep buzzing pools, tug the scarf closer to my eyes. My skin calls out, I am not like you. It is not faith, but the hand at my back that nudges me through, belonging with it or perhaps to it. a woman too visible, invisible. Safety is the pattern built by tiles. His insistence, just one sting and the body goes weak. I inch the veil aside, not to court impropriety, but to invite a sea breeze, catch a solitary chant, whisper my own prayer, for this fast to continue just a bit longer. Crow Haibun by Alison. Crow lands on a rowan tree in a shiver of feathers. The thrall days of chill are here. Crow feeds on the berries ripened in the sun of a mellow season. Wood smoke drifts from a stack with barely a tint of a peaty sky. Black unmuted, Crow's silhouette is sharp. Craw, hood, beak.
Dark veins fall from a copper beach.
After the frost, the bracken has bleached in the sun, catching the light. Brittle tendrils bristle in the breeze, a rustle to the ear. Crow looks down from the scree in the sky. A single tree stands alone, a skeleton, its thin branches spread.
Through the mist, a ghost rises.
The texture of bark is a story, times of growth, of dearth, of abundance, with each crease and every fold. From the silver birch, an imprint is shed, casting memory to the ground.
Hanging skin, papyrus.
Leaves quiver like stiff wings caught in the trees. A glimpse of past seasons spans the gap. It is dusk in the woods. Only the stalks, twigs, the brown husks filter the dying light.
A split trunk, rings meet.
Crow takes off, blatting the leaves, cawing as he rises, dropping a stone, a seed to the ground before the lowering sun.
At the day's end, deadwood blooms. After the Sun, Before the Stars by Jane Aldous. I'd promised to be there before the half-light dimmed, before the half-dark was summoned, or smoke grey changed to implacable blue. Already I could distinguish no colours but white in the cornice berries, snowy hens, cosmos, washing on the line. But I was late. It was after the sun and before the stars were revealed, and my eyes were taking time to focus. People were queuing for buses to take them home. Blackbirds were scurrying back to the roost, streetlights stuttering into life. The temperature was falling. All the shapes and shadows had merged by the time I arrived at the gate. But then I saw the glow of torches being lit, and I joined a raggle of illuminated faces. Someone handed me a book, and before the moon came up, many odes and ballads were read in the lee of Castle Rock. Lines from Thomas the Rhymer, the Fairy Queen, Burns, Scott, and Ugadothan were all invoked. We crossed through the grey, the hearth, the half-closed eyes, the curtain coming down into the opaque black ink, the certainty of night.
Sleep Tight by Patrick Gale. The child's cry cut through the Schumann quintet Desmond was playing as he enjoyed a whisky after supper. He tried ignoring it at first and turned back to the article his brother had just published in a journal. But the cry came again, more urgently, jangling his nerves and sending his glance skittering across the text. He swore under his breath, knowing he was being quite unreasonable, set down his book and glass and climbed the stairs. "Coming!" he called, out cheerfully as he could. The boy, Hamish, cried, "Quickly, please!" "I'm here," Desmond said, turning on the landing light and letting himself into the smaller spare room, his boyhood room, where he had thought to make the child at home among books and kites and ancient toy bears. "Whatever is it? I thought to find you murdered after such a row." Hamish was sitting stiffly upright against the headboard, his eyes wet in the moonlight. "It was the moth lady," he said softly. Desmond sighed. "Her again," and turned on the boy's bedside light, thinking it would comfort him. "No," Hamish cried out. "No light, it makes her worse. It's the light that brings her here." Desmond duly flicked off the light again, startled by the glimpse it had afforded of the boy's drawn, tear-stained face. "Okay," he said, and sat on the edge of the bed. "Hamish, I thought we'd discuss this. There is no moth lady." "But there is." "Well, there is in your dreams, but in real life you're quite safe from her. There are moths because it's a warm summer night, and they follow the lights and come in at the open windows. But they're not in here. They're all downstairs with me and my reading light." This rash stab at levity brought on another whimper. "Look," he said, "I'll close your window. How's that? You'll still get fresh air from the open door. Better?" There was a sniff, and he could tell the child was nodding. "Good boy. No more dreams now. Sleep tight." He returned via a much-needed top-up to his brother's supremely tedious article. Desmond disliked children as a rule. He found them tedious and unrestrained. He associated them with noise, mess and primary-coloured plastic, and regarded any friend embarked on parenthood as lost to a hostile power until further notice. Hamish was an exception. Wary, thoughtful, bookish, and apparently without friends, he reminded Desmond of himself in boyhood, and it was a happy accident that he had acquired him, and not one of the more typical specimens, as a godson. Hamish's unmarried mother, a curator and old friend, had often brought him to stay, cautiously at first, then with more confidence once she saw how he and Desmond warmed to one another. But this was his first visit on his own. She was away at a conference for 2 nights in the nearest university town, and had dropped Hamish off en route. "I shan't ring," she said. "It would only get him all churned up. But of course you can call me if there are any problems. There shouldn't be, though." For a 7-year-old, he was indeed a remarkably easy guest. While Desmond worked in his shed, he spent contented hours either curled in the shade reading a book, or wandering the paths around the marshes and reed beds that surrounded the cottage, armed with a little magnifying jar and a pocket guide to insects. He had no allergies or irritating dietary fads, but politely ate whatever food Desmond set before him. An unobtrusive boy, he repeatedly put Desmond in mind of a characteristically mordant phrase of his mother's, "Too good to live." Desmond would miss him when he was gone, and wondered if it would be thought sinister if he invited him back at the tired end of the summer holidays. Unmarried men had to be so careful around children these days, and the precautions had a way of arousing unbidden thoughts of the very deeds they were designed to prevent. Hamish's mother could always be invited too, of course, but being an adult, she required active hospitality, whereas the boy required as little attention as a demurely self-contained whippet. Until now, that was. The music had come to an end, and there was no sound but the usual soughing of the night breeze in the reed beds, and the persistent tapping of insects against the window pane nearest to his lamp. The slightly hoarse, unbroken voice was so unexpected in the studious gloom that Desmond sloshed his drink on the upholstery in surprise. "She's back," Hamish told him. "She wants to take me with her." "Jesus," Desmond shouted. The child's mother had not breathed a word of this neurotic fear of his. Perhaps it was put on, a piece of manipulation born of resentment at her self-absorbed absence. Hamish lingered on the edge of the pool of light, and Desmond remembered his feat of the bedside light upstairs. Curious child. The boy's plump lower lip was trembling, and he shivered. He had come down without his dressing gown and slippers, and even in July the house was prone to drafts. "Come on," Desmond told him. "Come and sit on the sofa and tell me all about the bloody woman." Hamish climbed obediently onto the chaise longue, tucking his legs up beside him as though afraid of what might lurk underneath. Feeling a great upswell of emotion, an unfamiliar mix of ordinary compassion and intense, heart-warming awareness of himself as fatherly protector, Desmond unfurled an antique patchwork quilt he kept on one of the sofa's arms and tucked it around him. "There," he said, "that's better." The boy nodded, still wretchedly warm. "Cup of cocoa? I can make some for both of us." "No," Hamish almost shouted, adding softly with tragic politeness, "Please, don't leave me, Desmond." "I won't. Good Lord, we didn't eat so much cheese with supper, did we?" Desmond sat back in his armchair, abandoning the journal for the time being. Perhaps the child felt the lack of a father. "Tell me about it," he said. "Sometimes you have to talk about bad dreams to make them stay away." "She's not a dream." "But, very well, if you say so. Who is she?" "I told you, the moth lady. She's very thin and sort of whispery. She's naked and she has compound eyes and antennae like brown feathers. She doesn't speak, but she just uncoils her proboscis and touches me, and I sort of feel her words. She wants to take me, and I don't want to go." "Well, you won't. You'll stay right here with me." "Please don't laugh at me." "Sorry, I wouldn't dream of it." "Why does she want you?" "I can't tell. But she wants to wrap me in a leathery cocoon so I can't move." "So you'll become a moth too?" "No, I think it's for food." Desmond sighed. The boy had obviously spent far too long hunting dragonfly in the glare of noon. Perhaps he even had a touch of sunstroke. Desmond put a hand to Hamish's forehead, but it was cool and slightly clammy. "No one is taking you for food or anything else," he assured him. "You curl up there and go to sleep. You're quite safe. If the moth lady comes for you, I'll spray her with poison and stick her with a pin for you to admire in the morning." There, only joking. Don't take on. You're sure no cocoa?" "No, thank you, Desmond. I think I'll be safe here, won't I?" "Absolutely." "Are the windows closed?" They weren't, of course, because it was July and the house would have swiftly become stuffy. His practice was to leave the dining room's windows open and its door closed so that cooler air could be drawn in, but no insects could see his reading light to be drawn in too. "You know," Desmond began, making one last appeal to reason, "moths do no harm to anything. It's only their caterpillars that eat wool or plants. I never waste money on cashmere in case a clothes moth lays eggs on it. But I couldn't say I've ever been hurt by one. Wasps and hornets, now, they're another matter." "I didn't say she was a moth. She's just like one." "Ah." Hamish was unconvinced, but he was also exhausted, worn out by fear, and he yawned heavily as he spoke and pulled the quilts more snugly around him. Relieved, imagining he would carry him back to bed when he himself retired, Desmond took a sip of what remained unspilled of his whiskey and picked up the journal again, but his concentration strayed within seconds, and he soon realised he had read the same dull sentence several times over without ever grasping the sense. He glanced up. Hamish was sound asleep. Desmond discarded the journal and reached for the little insect book that had inspired the boy's imagination so drastically. 232 species in colour, it promised. He flicked past pages of beetles and flies of improbable size and came to a halt on a page devoted to the goat moth. Its body was elegantly striped in shades of grey and cream. It had indeed a certain dustily feminine elegance, but it was scarcely threatening, even when reproduced to seem the size of his thumb. Evil-looking caterpillar, he read, has a pungent odour, not easy to find as they feed on dead willow trees, but a large tree sometimes has hundreds of larvae boring in it. There were several dead or dying willows across the way on the marsh's edge. He had a clear image of them, as he too fell asleep. He pictured the unnerving way they had of seeming to rot and die, only to spring up again from where a broken limb had rooted in the mud. He woke at the sound of his whiskey glass smashing on the floor. There was a filthy smell coming from nearby, far more pungent than the smell of whiskey. He traced it in seconds to the lamp, where he saw to his disgust that some kind of fly or moth was cremating itself against the bulb. He turned the lamp off instinctively, then cried out as broken glass pierced his sock. He limped across to the hall in the moonlight and turned on the light out there. Hamish had taken himself off to bed. The quilt was discarded on the floor with uncharacteristic carelessness. Desmond tooted, folded it back onto the sofa's arm, then swept the broken glass into a dustpan. He opened the back door to tip the shards directly into the rubbish bin, and was briefly transfixed by the beauty of the night, and took a few steps away from the door in his socks. The breeze that had been stirring the reeds earlier was now quite gone, so the air was full of suggestive scents. River mud, grass mowings, lavender from the bushes that defined the path to the garden gate, and something else, something sweet. The full moon was still up, reflected in the water and silvering the reeds and willows. Then he saw the moths. He saw only a few at first, which were apparently crossing the garden from the marsh. But tracing their flight, he saw that there were scores of them, maybe more than 100, dancing in the moonlight and seeming to gather about Hamish's unlit, reopened window. He ran back through the house, ignoring the pain in his cut foot, shouting the boy's name. The bed was empty, the sheets quite cold. An old, long-forgotten fear told him, as he ran from room to empty room, that his search would be fruitless. He had waded, gasping, around the marsh's fringes for half an hour, muddying his boots and trousers, before he thought to ring the police and the boy's mother. He knew what people would say. He knew how it would look.
It is an ordinary evening, a late sun dipping, an apostrophe of light playing chase with waves as I walk the shore road. In front of me your shadow, arms like melting stars, full of mysteries. You left with the dandelion clocks. For weeks I woke to the smell of you gone. The earth spinning, its backscatter of love.
Decoration of a Fermented Season by Alice Tarbuck. What I'm trying to say is that somewhere, where there is an orchard, a child plunges her thumb down through rotten flesh to find the centre of a plum that winter is made of. Under the leaves, sticky with dark fruit she knows. The edges catch as the low sun sinks. Her thumb bleeds, redder than plum skin, more iron than tart sugar. So the winter, because the orchard is synchronous, produces sharp channels of frost along the grass, ices the last of the wasps, transforms the plums into detritus, sends her home in the last light with the dark stone rattling in her shoe.